Hello there, very good evening and welcome to Let's Talk Politics. I'm your host, Eddie Lane, and of course, as we always do, we let you know that this program is dedicated to examine the progress that the People's Progressive Party civic government has made since assuming office on August 2nd of last year. And of course, we also use the opportunity to respond to the lies, misinformation, and theatrics of the APNU AFC opposition. I have with me this evening to discuss some recent developments, very laughable, of course, from the UPNU AFC. I have with me this evening, of course, the Minister of Home Affairs, the Honorable Robeson Benn. Minister, good evening and welcome to the program. I think I think we can safely say this afternoon we've had quite a light moment with the comedy coming from the opposition benches. Could you imagine Harmon and his gang filing no confidence motion against ministers of the People's Progressive Party civic government, a government that has done more in 11 months than APNU did in 5 years. These guys are filing no confidence motion. I don't know how you're going to start this off, Minister, but I'm going to give you a chance to make some opening comments before we get deep into this program.
Yes, thanks for having me again. I didn't expect to be back on your show uh, this early, but thanks for having me. As you say, it was rather a ludicrous but amusing event, this filing of no confidence motions against myself and Dr. Frank Anthony. Uh, but it speaks to deeper issues relating to the desperation of the AP and new AFC in the light of them being continuously exposed in respect of their failings, both in government when they were there and also against the efforts which we're making, as you said, in just 11 months, even with the COVID and with floods, severe flooding. Uh, I think while we have the light moment, we have to look at the deeper meaning behind this effort, intervention, charade somehow of the APNU AFC in the person of Mr. Harmon, who is the leader now of the APNU AFC, PNC in the parliament and government. And I'm not sure whether he's going to survive a general council and an election uh, as leader of that. I was going to say cabal, but I want to say of that political party. But I think while we have a light moment, we have to pay greater attention to the continued maliciousness, the mischief, and the continuing efforts to create disorder, confusion, mayhem, and racial strife in Guyana. I think that's what we have to watch out for them with respect to them, and particularly in respect of Harmon, who is a failed leader. He's already a failed leader, and you only have to look at the presentations from himself and Ramjatan and the young brigade that they're trying to mislead and having them disgrace themselves in the parliament in respect of their presentations.
Thanks for your opening comments, Minister Ben. And I think you've set the tone for tonight's program for us to really examine. When we want to talk about no confidence motion, then maybe we got to look at Harmon himself, as like you rightly said, as a fail. And you talk about the AP and new AFC, but let us deal with Harmon, and we can deal with the members of the opposition one by one, each and every one of them, and show enough cause why they maybe are unfit to hold the positions that they're holding. Harman, for example, has failed as a member of parliament, has been fingered in a lot of questionable activities while he was a minister of state. Then Granger invented a position for him as Director General in the Office of the President, then Minister of Presidency.
That,
And then, go ahead, Minister, go ahead.
No, I was just noting his twists and turns as a minister, or uh, an Apache, as it were, in the APNU AFC episode in government. Um, yes, there were quite a bit of twists and turns in relation to his positioning, and then his seeming rise to power within that organization uh, after they finally lost the elections um, just 11 months ago when the results were finally declared.
And you know, Minister, Harmon failed as a minister of the government, of the then government. He failed as what you call it, Director General, and he has failed as a leader of the opposition. I was looking at a video recently with the Attorney General, the Honorable Anil Nandalal, saying that sometimes he gets the feeling that he wants to pick up the phone and call Harmon and his gang to say, look, that is not how you criticize the government. I'll tell you how to. That's how incompetent Harmon and his gang really are. So anybody in no confidence motion should be filed against. Should be people like Harmon and the others that you have in there. And we're gonna deal with Harmon, I think, in the first instance, Minister. Because if you look, and I will also deal with your record as Minister of Home Affairs, and I can deal with your record as a minister of this government, as a minister of more than one PPC government, as a commissioner GCOM, and we can break it up and show your success as a minister, as a leader in the PPP at every levels. But I want us to deal with Harmon first, and we're going to do some comparison with Ramjatan tenure in office and your 10, 11 months in office. But we've seen the actions of Harmon since he was elected, or was installed as leader of the opposition, because Granger handpicked him and put him there to do his bidding. He has been an absolute failure. Harmon has not gone to the National Assembly on a single occasion and attempted to hold the PPPC government accountable to say, look, you're putting X amount of money into this program. We believe that you should put more, and these are the reasons. Or this program, I don't think this program is good for Guyana. Here is an alternative. All that Harmon does is go to Parliament. He and his gang, somebody crying out about laptops are stolen. They lie down in the Parliament on the floor. They go into a room by themselves. That's it. And they bang on tables, make noise. Absolutely no contribution. That is failure. He is failing 217,000 people who voted for them.
Yes, well, of course, if we compare the record of leadership while the PPPC was in opposition compared to the type of leadership the AP and UAFC is doing in Parliament under Harmon, it pales into insignificance. The questioning of the budget when we were in opposition, uh, the examination at the level of the Public Accounts Committee, Irfan Ali held the chair there for quite a while. Uh, the leadership of Bar Jagdio in excoriating them with respect to their program. In fact, giving them frank advice with respect to their programs, with respect to their actions, in respect of the dismissal of sugar workers, the dismissal of the assistance to the Amerindian communities, the question of the blocking of the river at Borbis by bauxite workers in a misguided way. All these things were discussed in a frank, open manner, which, if they would have taken any cognizance of what was said in a genuine manner, perhaps they would have done somewhat better. But they made no effort to take um, a true uh, reference, a true appreciation of the criticisms which were being made against them. And of course, they ran into problems. Not that they cared in any event, they couldn't care less because they were busy looking after themselves. They were busy doing deals for themselves and with their cronies and friends and others, which is bringing them into problems with Soko and other persons, and will continue to bring them into disrepute and dishonor. Their membership, their supporters, ordinary people who they presume would naturally support them, know that they were only looking after themselves, know that they were not taking care of the needs of even their own supporters or even the country at large, and were bringing the country into difficulty. Uh, so, and particularly now, this situation where the only way they think that they could present a position is not to have a rational debate in the parliament, but is to make virulent attacks, stomp down, shout down, give erroneous figures, and be as offensive as possible. This is what is happening in the parliament. And this is the continued assault they have on the sanctity of the parliament and on the good sense of Guyanese people. That is the difficulty we have, as I've said, in the parliament, that if we are really to have a rapprochement, rational debate, peace in the country, a democratic ethos being fostered and protected, it has to start in the parliament amongst our parliamentarians. But it's not a one-way street. The parliament is made up of three parties, as it were, and there being a large opposition party, as it were, have a significant role to play with respect to how the discourse is conducted in the parliament and how the national development debate goes ahead. But they're failing miserably at that effort. They have no interest in that. I think that they want to continue in their role of engendering sedition and disorder and to make it possible for there to be a complete breakdown in law because perhaps they feel that this is the only road to power for themselves.
And you know, Minister, sometimes when you listen to these guys and you watch some of the actions that they take, one wonders, how the 200,000 plus people who voted for them are really feeling. I mean, the number has dwindled significantly with what they did over the 5 months when they were trying to hold on to power. The numbers would have dwindled, but I think a lot of people are feeling guilt. They regret among the people who voted for them to see this bunch, this lazy, incompetent, useless bunch of people who thinks that they can get up one day and show up, at Parliament and say they're filing no confidence motion against ministers of the government. Ministers whose track records, if you put the track record of you, Minister Benn, or the track record individually of Minister Frank Anthony, you can put all the ministers who served in APNO AFC together, and I don't think they will achieve 80% or 50% of what you would have done or Minister Anthony would have done. Minister Anthony has managed a COVID-19 pandemic, has managed to secure, along with the government of the PPC government, enough vaccination for the adult population of this country. What APNO did is to hide the numbers of infection. So anybody,
Yeah, well, mhm.
go ahead, go ahead,
Yeah,
please.
well, what really goes if we talk about the COVID issue, fundamentally in the persona of Harmon himself, uh, that which shows how unfit and inept he is that he himself will go and take the vaccines. He will get vaccinated, but as I was recently told, would go to Linden and will be telling people that they should not take the vaccine unless they get further information. They got to get more information before they take the vaccine. He is helping along. He is exciting. He is creating vaccine hesitancy. But it's all right for him. His life is preserved. He's gotten the jobs from the PPPC government. But He's going to tell people who are, he vows are his supporters, that they need more information before they go and take the vaccines. Does he really have any care or interest in the protection of the lives of his people, of the people who he claims and they claim that are their supporters? They don't have. He doesn't have. And this is why I say he's unfit and inept as a leader. His first order of business in respect of the COVID pandemic is to make sure and to come howling and knocking on the doors at Frank Anthony's ministry to demand and to make sure that everybody gets vaccinated, particularly in Region 10, where he was recently. But there he is going and telling people that they need more information before they go and take vaccines. When he already took his, he has already taken his. Can anyone be more crass, more inept, more contemptuous of people, and particularly of people who is presuming to lead than that? I think not.
And you know, Minister, if we don't even need to move as far as the COVID or response to the COVID-19 or what Harmon is doing, this nation, the people of this country have absolutely no confidence in Harmon. You know why? Because Harmon was at the forefront trying to steal an election, an entire election in the full view of the people of this country. So even though confidence motion is to be filed, I think the people of this country have absolutely no confidence in Harmon. Harmon stood there for 5 months and did that. You spoke about his role in trying to create vaccine hesitancy. You know who people don't have confidence in, this nation don't have confidence in? Harmon, who goes to Region 5 to use the death of two innocent young boys to spread race hate, to spread division. Those are the things, the people who steal an election, trying to create vaccine hesitancy, and trying to spread race hate, division, using Cathy Hughes' husband, Nigel Hughes, and together they're trying to divide people. That those are the actions that people will not have confidence in people like Harmon in. Harmon, who's still to answer about his trip to China, about all his activities, questionable activities, him appearing on yachts and so on and all sorts of things. And the vice president recently spoke about that safe in that office. So if people don't, if anybody in the parliament that we don't have confidence in, it is Harmon and his gang. So I don't know where these guys come up with these things. I feel sometimes, Minister, these guys sleep, wake up, and say to themselves, look, today is a day, let me see if I can be more stupid than yesterday. And they come out and they do these things to prove that they're way more stupid than the day before.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you mentioned about the the question of the elections, the protection of our democracy, the long period of the recount, and the final declaration of the results. And there was a period of time during the recount while it was on the way, that one hoped that early on that there would have been a throwing in of the towel, an undertaking that we would move on and beyond the issues related to the attempted theft of the entire country, the government and the administration. But it was clear that the architects of it, and it's not only Harmon, it's also Granger, who I think is the chief architect of all of this, who is the chief programmer of all of these problems, with able assistance for nefarious activities in the persons of Harmon, uh, that they continued on the road to drag the country down, even while we had the COVID pandemic and other issues going on, of prolonging the question of the result being published, coming out for the world to see, after we had the ridiculous effort by Mingo and others and Lowenfield in respect of declaring of results. So fundamentally one has to appreciate that what they all undertook was criminal in nature, that they should still have to pay for it, that they should still have to account for it. And again, they seem to have a problem with numbers. They had a problem with numbers when the no confidence motion was taken, the Charnas motion was, the Charnas effort was put forward uh, in Parliament when they lost the no confidence motion. And they had a problem with numbers thereafter. And then they had a problem with numbers when the election numbers were being tallied up. And we had the bed sheets and the fictitious declarations by Mingo and then by Lowenfield 3 times. And now again, they seem to have a problem with numbers of what exists in the parliament. I don't think they have the numbers. I don't think that there's anybody on our side who will vote for them in any of these motions. I don't think that there's anybody on our side who would abstain in respect of the voting on these motions. So, other than engendering, perhaps for some interest of some persons, spirited debate, rancorous attacks, perhaps, because it always descends to that somehow, there is nothing in it. It's an effort to distract, to divert, to confuse people in respect of the efforts which are on the way. The efforts on the way in the judicial system, in the criminal justice system, with things which have been done in relation, as you mentioned, to the West Coast police murders, those tragic events, and the assaults which happened on ordinary people thereafter. Investigations are on the way. Persons are trying to delay, to besmirch people's character, to suggest that the investigations are not fit and proper, to use that now infamous term. Uh, so I think that some persons were recently charged for perverting the course of justice. If there hasn't been a continuous case of attempting to pervert the course of justice with respect to all of these issues, it has got to be clearly seen that the efforts on the other side with respect to these issues are indeed attempts to pervert the course of justice in relation to these matters.
You know, Minister, and this is the question. You touched on an important matter there, and this is always the question. People need to ask Harmon and the APNU AFC why, when the police force, under, of course, the stewardship of you, the Minister of Home Affairs, why, when the police force is making breakthroughs in a number of criminal matters, all of a sudden Harmon files no confidence motion against the minister who's overlooking the sector? The only people, the only people who would want to put a halt to the success in terms of fighting are people who have an interest in crime. So people need to ask Harmon and the APNU, AFC, and the PNC, why are you attempting to block the efforts that are being made to address the many crimes that they fail to address? Some of them they fail to address that are being addressed now. It's only a criminal would want to divert the police attention from crimes. So that's the question they need to ask. And you spoke about the numbers, Minister. Interestingly, these guys, since they've taken up their positions in the opposition benches where they'll be for a very long time, they have attempted on several occasions to make the National Assembly a circus. Because it's a bunch of clowns you have. They're attempting to make the National Assembly a circus. So they're going to go there, lots of hollow talk, like they do on everything else, make a set of noise, waste state resources because you have to feed them, you have to find Wi-Fi for them, all sorts of things in Parliament. knowing fully well that they don't even have a basis to file the motions. There is nothing. What are they filing based on what? They're filing a no confidence motion against you because you have managed to lead the security sector in such a way where crime is done and where criminals are being captured. Is that the reason why they're filing a no confidence motion against you? Is the no confidence motion against Minister Anthony because he managed to secure, along with the government of Guyana, managed to secure adequate vaccines, COVID-19 vaccines for the people of this country? What exactly is the basis? The only basis I see is that they want to continue to bring the National Assembly to a level, of pure, a pure circus. That is all I can see. You have 31
Yes,
seats, and that is what
yes,
you're trying to do. For what?
yeah, yeah. They as I said, they want to deflect, divert, um, but with malice in it. With malice in it, we have been consistently saying that crime is down currently year to date compared to last year by 23%. That in relation to road deaths, they have decreased by 30%. In spite of all the, perhaps when we had the big problem with the recount and all of those things, people weren't paying attention to the crime, and that people weren't being robbed by firearm toting bandits. There was crime there all the time. We have knocked it down by 23%. And I've had consistent discussions with the police in relation to their posture and with the joint services support as to how we can knock it down further. Uh, of course, there has been a lot of talk, a lot of noise out there in social media with respect to crime, serious crime. Certainly, any crime, any incident of crime hurts us, hurts the country. We would rather not have it happen. But the fact is that crime, serious crime, is down by 23%. Uh, we've examined the statistics. We agonize over how we should respond to the issue of crime, how we should try to cover the areas where there are gaps. We have had deficits which we're trying to make up in respect of vehicles. Hopefully, by the end of July, we'll have quite a number of new vehicles to be put in the fray. We are working in respect of the training of our policemen. Not all policemen and women too are bad, but when one behaves badly, it besmirches the entire police force. We're working at those issues. We're hoping that the engagement between the police and the public would be recorded in the stations and elsewhere by persons so to engender better, uh, a better relationship and better behavior, and that people won't fight and rumble with the police when they're needed for questioning or anything. We have issues of police corruption, which didn't spring up 11 months ago, and which we are working at to improve. It's a rugged road to walk to fix all of these issues. But as I heard recently, if something goes wrong in your home or your community, who are you going to call? You got to call the police. And we got to work with the police and the community policing groups and other persons who have an interest in security to making us all safe. And so that we can protect each other, protect ourselves, some people who have a vested interest in continuing crime, criminal behavior, criminal activity, drug and money laundering, drug people smuggling, trafficking in persons, all those issues we're working harder. And but those who want to create disorder, who want to have a breakdown in law and order, who want to have the criminals rule the roost, Though there are those who have an interest by way of their behavior for sure in having crime become much worse because they think it will give them political opportunity. There are persons who think that worsening crime will give them political opportunity. But as I said, the numbers are different from what they are suggesting, and it the numbers will continue to be better as we work at this problem. I have said that we need to have a more balanced policing force. We need to have more diversity in the forces. We need to understand and work with each other better in relation to crime fighting. We need not to feel naturally aggrieved when the police come to us and have to deal with our issues. Uh, we have to create more peace in Guyana. But we wouldn't have more peace in Guyana if we have political leaders of large groupings of persons who feel that the only path to power is by violence, by engendering crime, by supporting activities which do not help to stabilize critical issues in the community, and who think that opportunistically the only way to get to power is by engendering more and more disorder in the country. And this is where a fundamental disagreement and position with Mr. Harmon and others of his ilk, that they think by making as much noise, by making threats, by being violent in some confrontations, by encouraging lawlessness, that things will get better. But that is not the role of a political party and a political leader in a democratic culture. And so we divert and we separate uh, our pathways based on the different positions that they take with respect to crime. Crime is down by 23%. That's the number in case of violent crimes. Road deaths are down by 30%. We are working hard at those issues and we will continue to do so in spite of the negative efforts and irresponsible criticisms of Harmon as leader of the APNU AFC and others of his ilk. And again, we want to reject the effort to create racial strife. A lot of the actions are being undertaken now in relations to the movements just recent related to the West Coast Berbice tragedies. That is the only time when they get moving. That is the only time when they hope to make noise and to run in the streets and perhaps get people boarding the roadways. And so again, they cannot succeed and they will not be allowed to succeed in this effort. The only effort, the only interest they have to make or want to make when it comes to issues related to opportunistically getting into power is related to violence, related to creating upsets, related to make Guyanese or people hate, dislike, and hurt each other. And so the pathway that Harmon has chosen, the pathway that he is leading his people and others in the parliament down, is a pathway of no good, of negativity, distrust, hate, and incitement. And I'm not unhappy to be able to debate this issue with them in Parliament. In fact, I'm glad, rather glad that the matter has come up, though it deflects. It's a deflecting issue.
And Minister, as far as I'm concerned, because you outlined a track record that Ramjatan couldn't achieve in 5 years. What was Ramjatan's plan for crime fighting? Dogs and ponies. Remember that? Getting more dogs and more horses and put them all over the place. Ramjatan sent policemen to the United States of America to learn to ride bicycles. That was his crime fighting strategy, right? His strategy was when he couldn't deal with the issue, is to say, I don't know what to do, I give up, I don't know what to do. Ramjatan presided over the worst prison fire that caused so many deaths in the history of this country, at least post independence Guyana. Ramjatan presided over that. And these guys are trying to say they have confidence in him. He was drunk most of the days when he was supposed to be at work. And Harmon is saying that no, we had confidence in him. We don't have confidence in Robeson Benn, who brought down the numbers in terms of crime, who has been working to ensure that there's a proper strategy in place, who has been holding policemen accountable for their actions, who has managed
Well,
the security in a
yes,
more effective way.
I, yeah, I reminded about the prison, the tragedy in the prisons where prisoners lost their lives, so, and that two prisons were actually burned, both the Georgetown, the Camp Street prison, and the Lusignan prison. And on Saturday, I went where we established the first area, the first new accommodation for prisoners to bring them out to the rain and on from on the tents and lying on the ground from the previous administration. We just moved over 180 of them on Saturday uh, to double bunks um, in dry and enclosed surroundings. And we're working to have another unit like that established within 2 weeks. So hopefully, just so we'll have over 300 of those prisoners who are lying on the ground there. It did take a while to get the project completed, but it had to be done right. So those who remain outside uh, would be better accommodated to in double bunks with mattresses. The separation would be put in place, so there'll be less violence and interaction between them, and they'll not have as much upsets out there at Lusignan. Uh, so we're working hard at this, and of course, we're putting in the apparatus and trying to engender proper interest amongst the prison officers and others to make sure we don't have escapes, continuing escapes. We've also said to the prison directorate that they need to plant 4,000 trees and that we, uh, prisoners have to plant their own greens, raise their own chickens, get their own tomatoes, get their own eggs, and to supply enough for themselves and even to sell outside of the prison system. That's what we're working on. I think within 2 years it will be remarkably improved, along with the new prison units, which will be safer and accommodating, established for proper rehabilitation and education and vocational skills training for the prisoners out there. So we want to get away from that era where, as I've been told, that prisoners were there in the buildings and were being burned to death, and nobody could or would do anything about it.
And but and you continue, Minister, to outline an impeccable track record. So when you look at and this is something that took place in just 11 months. We are celebrating the first year of the PPPC government in office in just under a month, on the 2nd of August of this year. So you're talking just about 11 months thereabout. You're talking about transformation of the prison system, of the police force, trying to recreate a professional police force, not a case where there was political interference and all sorts of things. But what you have, and this is what I believe, is that Harmon and the APNU AFC, the opposition in parliament, are simply rabble rousers. They want to make noise. They want to preach to a crowd because they're still to tell their supporters what happened to the SOPs, why the two um, the two election petitions fail. They can't. So what they do, they create diversions. They go and they make a set of noise in the National Assembly, appearing as though they're working, they're representing people. And we've seen how far they are removed from reality. That the people don't want to hear them. Harmon, imagine Harmon going to inspect, to visit flood affected communities. And the man went to a community that was so dry. Apparently the mud was cracking, but that's the community he went to visit. He didn't wear a long boots. He didn't go to Kwakwani in the deep waters. He didn't go to Blackbush Polar in the deep waters. It was the PPPC government, including all the ministers of the government, visiting communities, meeting with people, bringing relief to them. I want to talk a little bit briefly about Minister Anthony and the comparison with Walter Lawrence. Minister Anthony, after taking over that position, had to dump billions of dollars in expired drugs that Walter Lawrence bought. Walter Lawrence bought, and the people in Kokwani, the people in Aishalton, the people in Maruka couldn't even get Panadol under the coalition. But you had billions of dollars in expired drugs that she bought. She was storing drugs in a hotel room that is now the COVID hospital. The $600 million contract to one company under the guise of it being emergency supply, and half of it has not yet been delivered. And you can count repeatedly the violations. But they had confidence in Walter Lawrence, who was holding on to all the COVID 19 tests and weren't giving the doctors to do their jobs, was underreporting the COVID 19 numbers just to look good, was busy signing on Region 4 declaration where her signature should not be, were busy behaving bad in Ashman's building, but they had confidence in her. The people of this country, however, don't have confidence in Harmon, in Valda Lawrence, in Ramjatan, and in any one of them. Like I said, they're a bunch of rabble rousers who just want to make noise, who just want to sing as though they're intelligent. But as far as I'm concerned, they're a bunch of fools who just have nothing better to do. They can't contribute to this country, to the development of this country. And it's getting worse for them because they're seeing the progress that are taking place under the Irfan Ali led administration. And guess what? They're running mad.
Yeah, well, I think that we gotta say in any event that we don't mind the criticism. We don't mind criticism, critique. Uh, in fact, we would rather have it, but it has to be rational. It has to be researched. It has to be fixated, present in numbers, rational numbers that you could do or use. Even, I grew up at the time when you had little ABC and big ABC. But if you don't know what the majority of what is what, that disgrace we went through all the way to the Caribbean Court of Justice, and all the indescribable things we've experienced, mostly over the last year with the recount. We have to have a reliable, stable, non seemingly psychotic partner in the parliament. And for us to have that, we have to have a leader on the other side who's rational, who does not simply want to think that the only way to power is to be virulent, vile in expressions, threatening of persons, um, There's no use to the parliament if we cannot have reasoned, rational debate on all sides. And I think in the parliament under Harmon, there's dramatic and plain for all to see failure in this regard. And the Hansard would record for posterity the disgraceful expressions and debate presentations from that side under the leadership of Harmon again. And he needs to take account of it. Um, I won't, I won't expect him anymore to be on the road to Damascus, but I think that there may be some figment of rationality remaining there which he should think account of, if not for the country, but for himself. But since the country takes precedence, I have to think more about the country. And if it is eventually that his party gets rid of him and he goes back to lawyering, it may be the best thing for Guyana. But I won't say I'm disappointed. I would say that I expected somewhat better. I expected somewhat better. But given the fact that he is in the full, in the truculent mode of a PNC leader, it's more of the same. It's unfortunate. It's irrational. Um, Granger, the position was suave, but as malicious as ever. So I don't think we can expect better from them. They have to have a seminal change in relation to their policy, in relation to their politics, in relation to their relationship with people, in relation to whether they could find any empathy at all for the Guyanese people across all races and cultures. Uh, I don't think we're on a good track with our partner in the parliament under the leadership of Harmon. I don't think it will get better. I think they will try to seize every opportunity to disgrace themselves, unbeknownst to them perhaps. But it's plain out there for all to see. I still have to remind ourselves that there are issues in relation to um, movements of funds while they were in government. I particularly remember funds being moved from the asphalt plant accounts of the Demerara Harbor Bridge um, uh, to do other things. Some study for the new Demerara Bridge, uh, study which was never completed, but I think paid for. Uh, there's a lot of skeletons out there, and those skeletons are rattling. And those skeletons, of course, have to have the examination, the forensic examination of the law agencies. Um, I hope that the issues with the movement of funds, the movement and the transfer of lands and so on could be dealt with, and that people will come clean so that we could wrap up some of those issues without too much stress. One wonders sometimes at the type of histrionics which they carry on both in the parliament and outside, is to say that don't touch me at all, or else this will happen to you. Uh, I could only say that we are not afraid. We will do what is right by the laws and by the country, and to protect the people of the country and to protect the development of the country. And people have to be brought to account, and people have to admit malfeasance and wrongdoing so that we can move forward. Harmon can play a large part in this. Um, if he can devolve, perhaps if he can remove himself from certain positions, so that we could have we can navigate ourselves to a position where we could deal with some of these difficult issues with too much trouble. But the current posture where they want to engender strife, engender particularly racial strife, engender misbehavior in the security forces, where they continue to threaten people, where they continue to encourage an atmosphere of lawlessness in the open spaces of the city, making the city unsafe for most citizens, and even for those who partake in that kind of behavior. It has to come to an end, and it will come to an end at some point in time. The best time I think now for it to come to an end is when Harmon is removed or removes himself from leadership of the APNU in the parliament. Um, I think perhaps a great deal of introspection is needed on that side with respect to a future for that party. I wouldn't say that it would be a great deal of glee for myself and others if they change for the better, but we want them to change for the better for the country, and we wanted them to change for the better too, so that the country would develop. Uh, Not necessarily on the issue of political ascendancy by itself, but for the better benefit of the country and for the safety and security of its citizens.
Minister, you talk about change for the better and Harmon being removed. I was scratching my head. I was trying to wrap my mind around who, because what I'm seeing is an incompetent bunch, sanctimonious gang of, ill-informed, lazy group that has absolutely nothing to contribute. Who are you going to put? Sheriff Duncan? He will lie down in the parliament at midnight and sleep while the session is ongoing or in the middle of the day. Who are you going to put? Cathy Hughes, who will say that her laptop went missing and she was sitting on it? There is a serious leadership crisis in that gang. And I don't see them coming out of it very soon, comrade, because they're downright incompetent, lazy, and have absolutely nothing to contribute. But, Minister, importantly, people need to ask this question. Now that the police, under your leadership, have brought particular a particular gravy train to the end, has put a significant dent on the human trafficking ring, all of a sudden no confidence motion in Robeson Benn. Robeson Benn should not have, you know, provided a leadership that eventually the police was able to significantly break up a human trafficking gang, and then the visa restriction that were well, the visa requirement that was brought in, it's getting a lot of people in that camp, in that PNC camp, running crazy because you stop the source of the money for a lot of them. That is why they're running mad. So all of a sudden, no confidence motion in Robeson Benn. I mean, Minister, I'll give you a chance to close the program on that note.
Well, I'm glad to some extent that the issue of the trafficking is now on the table. I have to say, and one might have noticed in the newspapers recently that the United States did again accord us tier one in respect of the issue of trafficking in persons. That we ourselves, along with the Bahamas, are the only two Caribbean countries who were accorded tier one status in terms of our efforts of preventing trafficking in persons. We still have a lot of work to do. I think we're still at the tip of the iceberg in respect of the problem. I felt offended when they were trying to characterize the issue of people trafficking in respect of focusing on Haitians uh, by trying to make it a racial issue. I did point out at our last discussion that people from China and India and other places also have visa restrictions and they have to apply before they even arrive in Guyana. which is the same basis people from Haiti are on now, and that where they try to spread a rumor around the Caribbean that we were doing something special against Haitians because of their race, um, could not be true because 15 other Caribbean countries have the same restrictions against Haitians. So that argument fell flat on its face, if anyone noticed. So I'd like to repeat again that we are happy for anyone to come to Guyana and remain and to help us develop our country. In my view, we don't have a critical mass of people to develop the country, and we have many Guyanese who have left the country. So if people come and will stay and help work with us to build our country and become Guyanese, we're happy for it. Of all races. That's my perspective on it. But we will not be a party to modern day slavery, prostitution, trafficking in men, women, and children to other countries, trafficking of people of any race or creed or culture. We will not be a party to it. We cannot have a situation where over the for 5 years or so of the APNU, an amount of persons representing 5% of the total population of Guyana came to have disappeared, have disappeared, trafficked, smuggled, walked over, however, and we are aware, as you just said, that there was a lot of money and nefarious activities related to it. And we'll have an investigation completed on the matter. The numbers are there. The numbers are there. Over 38,000 people of one type or the other cannot be accounted for. And that's just one set of persons. There are others, Haitians, Cubans, Nigerians, others. Uh, we cannot be in modern times, in the 21st century, a party to this kind of effort. And we have the support of the UN and other agencies. We're happy to support Venezuelans who come here and need help. We're happy to support Haitians who come here and need help and want to settle down. We're happy to support returning Guyanese from Venezuela who are in difficulty and are coming back. We want to be able to help and to do all of these things, also with the support of international agencies. But we can't be involved in slavery, quasi slavery, trafficking, and smuggling in persons, even while the borders are closed, even while you have the COVID pandemic on. In
So,
closing, however, I want to say that even while we might consider the discussion we have ongoing, which has been engendered by the no confidence motion put up by Mr. Harmon, um, against myself and Frank, of course, Frank Anthony, Dr. Frank Anthony, that while we welcome the debate, while we think that we have much to defend ourselves and our work and our government in respect of our sectors, we think it's a serious deflection. We think that it's intended to not have us pay attention to the issues of law and order in respect of the welfare and security of our people. We think that it's a continuing effort to have instability in the country and in certain parts of the country and to create racial strife and incitement and anxieties and fear. And on that basis, we want to reject it, to reject those efforts, particularly from Mr. Harmon. Particularly from Mr. Harmon, but of course, we can't expect him to know or even do better. So, we'll meet in the parliament. We'll more than skirmish over the issue. We'll bring our figures. We'll bring our record. And in any event, we'll hear from them all kinds of irrational things and unsubstantiated, harebrained efforts. But I want to assure the public, I want to assure the Guyanese people that we're working the hardest to create a safe and secure environment in spite of certain difficulties which we are still working at. Crime, of course, does not sleep. We know that there are issues of poverty and stress related to the pandemic, but there are persons who are fully involved in a life of crime, and there are others outside from the political class who are supportive somehow. Directly, we've had that experience in engendering crime and violence and other issues which destabilize the country. And we're going to work the hardest, I can assure you all, to make sure that they will not succeed.
Thank you very much, Minister Ben. And it's a sad thing when we have to spend some of our time addressing the foolishness that comes out of Congress, please. Um, but it is what it is as a government. You have to. You cannot allow people like Harmon and the others to spread their foolishness and not answer them. But what I want to say in closing, Minister, is that I know for a fact that the people of this country have absolutely full confidence in you as the Minister of Home Affairs, in Minister Anthony as the Minister of Health, and in the PPPC government because they've seen the difference. They've seen the efforts to transform their lives and to ensure that we return them to some, return hope in the first instance to them, but also to return their lives to some meaning, having suffered tremendously for 5 years on the APNU with all sorts of taxes and all sorts of nonsense. Guyana is returning to a state of normalcy, and the People's Progressive Party Civic Administration is leading the charge, including you, Minister Ben, Minister Anthony, and every other single minister and officer of the PPPC government. We will continue to do that. And like you, I'm looking forward for that circus on the part of the AP and UFC when they show up in Parliament. And I bet you, I kid you not, Minister, they will not be able to even debate their own motion. They will not be able to make any meaningful contribution to their own motion that they're bringing. So it is going to be quite a scene, quite a sight for Guyanese. I think it's going to be some amount of stress relief um, because of all the stress you're going through the pandemic. The laughter, the comical show that they will put on there, obviously will bring some relief in terms of the stress for the Guyanese people. But I see nothing beyond that. I see hollow arguments of no substance and a complete waste of time that could have been used to debate and to discuss more important matters. Again, Minister, it was a pleasure to have you on this program, and I'm very confident that you will be back again very soon, so we can continue to talk about the progress that we're making in the security sector and every other sector of the government.
Thank you very much.